Okay, let's test. I think the mic is working well now. Okay, friends, welcome. I see people are joining. Please drop in the chat where you're joining from. I would like to know. Let's see how worldwide our community is. UK, John. Hello, John. John, I noticed on the previous live that I set up, but we had some technical difficulties. John, I saw your comment. Thank you. Thank you for the support. Oscar, always here. Thank you, brother. I really appreciate you. I didn't forget. Just want to mention, I didn't forget about the book. I have a book for you, but it's been a couple of weeks of constant moving since the last live when we spoke. So didn't forget about it. Anonymous Michigan. Okay, so what is? I'm trying to figure out the time. John, thank you for joining. Quite. How do you consider it? Late at night or early in the morning? I'm not sure which one of those two, but thank you. I appreciate you. Let's see someone more. Let's see, where do we have people from? I have my coffee. I'm hoping we can touch on. I want to ask you what you want to talk about. I wanted to say I want to ask you what you want to talk about. I want to be answering your questions, but I would also like to touch on some topics that I've been writing about recently, or maybe that I want want to talk about always. Just trying to approach it from different perspectives, but maybe addressing personal growth and mental health in a bit more holistic way, and maybe from an existentialist perspective. I would like to touch on that topic. John saying quite late, but I work late night shifts anyway. Always love listening to you. Thank you. I really appreciate you. I was in Montenegro when I was living in Montenegro. That's my home country. I was working as an air traffic controller, so I was doing shift work, and I can tell you that night shifts. I don't want to sound spoiled or anything, but I was struggling with them. I didn't enjoy them at all. How about you? Is it, you're saying late night shifts? You're always working the night shift, or you're doing shift work? I was doing, for example, one day morning, another day afternoon, then the third day is night shift, then 2 days free, and like that in circle with some changes. But is that the type of work that you're doing? Because I know that's pretty intense and exhausting, because you're changing your you're trying to change your circadian rhythm, you're changing your daily schedule every day. So I think people who haven't experienced it cannot appreciate how difficult it is to do shift work. So respect to you, John. Mm. Yeah, a bit of depressing when it's constantly dark. I can imagine that. We have Uriel, am I pronouncing correctly? Uriel, hey. Santino, hello, Santino. Nomadic. I know how it is. I hope you're enjoying it and you find some periods of stability here and there. Okay, the coffee is hitting, and let's see, friends. I'm open for all of your questions, but trying to find stability. I'm open for all of your questions. here is what I would like to do. I want to ask you, because this live is for you and for your pleasure or enjoyment or value, first and foremost. So I want to ask you, would you like me to go on a mini, and not to give a whole, workshop length delivery of a certain topic, but would you like me to do at least a mini quote unquote rant on something along the lines of maybe what I promised the last time, which is existential view of anxiety? Maybe I can also expand on, for example, what I wrote about. For me, it's last night. For you, maybe it's the same day. For a lot of you, about this different approach to mental health and mental health issues. Would you like me to touch on some of those things, or maybe we have a lot of questions lined up? So maybe you want to dive straight into some questions that you have for me. Let me know. Let me know. This is for you, so I want to know. Mini rant followed by Q&A. Rant on existential anxiety briefly. I think we have amazing. Let me just hydrate. And I know Oscar and I talked about this, so I would like him to hear this. John asking, is there a difference between philosophical anxiety and psychological, like how Kierkegaard talks about it compared to academic psychology? Well, that's I would like to touch on that. So let's open. I'm not going to make this into a formality, and I will just talk like a normal human being. If we sat on a coffee, and I was a friend who wants to share this idea with you, and I am a friend, and I am drinking coffee. Maybe some of you are also drinking coffee, so we can talk naturally. To address first, is there a difference between philosophical anxiety and psychological? There is, and the problem with anxiety is we cannot even say the distinction is philosophical versus psychological, because anxiety is nowadays used in so many different ways where you're not even sure what the distinction is. Are we talking about an emotion? Are we talking about mental health disorder? Are we talking about social anxiety? Are we talking about anxiety in existential sense? So it's not even just the division between philosophy and psychology. But here is what I would like to tell you. Anxiety, as it first appears in discussion of thinkers, that anxiety, when talking about that type of anxiety, there is no separation of philosophical and psychological. Why? Kierkegaard is often regarded the first psychologist. Nietzsche, Nietzsche said of himself, Nietzsche being as humble as he was, Nietzsche said of himself that he was the first psychologist. It's a debate. Kierkegaard was a bit older than Nietzsche and wrote before him. Nietzsche never got to read him, but the first psychologist is Nietzsche or Kierkegaard or Dostoevsky. Dostoevsky also. Those are the first psychologists before the science of psychology. So then I would say that we cannot divorce philosophical from psychological in this case. So anxiety, now I have to put aside, for example, let's say social anxiety. I want to put aside for a moment these specific types of anxiety. I want to talk about anxiety as it first appears in writing. You have also, even before Kierkegaard, you have thinkers like Blaise Pascal, philosopher / theologian / scientist. Not really theologian, but he was a religious thinker, definitely. He wrote about something that pointed towards the feeling of anxiety, but he never specifically addressed it. But you can see in Blaise Pascal, if I'm pronouncing correctly, writings, something that is announcing this feeling of anxiety. Before that, no thinker, as great as they were, the ancients and medieval thinkers, no one wrote about this emotion, this internal occurrence that we recognize as anxiety. Kierkegaard is the first thinker who directly addresses anxiety, the first one. He has a small book, The Concept of Dread, or The Concept of Anxiety. How those can be different translations, but from Kierkegaard we start addressing anxiety. And who is addressing anxiety? Existentialists. Just like we can debate who is the first psychologist, Kierkegaard or Nietzsche, we can also debate who is the father of existentialism, Kierkegaard or Nietzsche. We don't need to really have that debate, but both of them have contributed to the science of psychology, or let's say the science. Yeah, psychology as a discipline. Both of them have set foundations for sure, and both of them have inspired existentialists. So you can see existentialists are first who say, let's talk about this thing, anxiety or angst or dread. Let's talk about it, because that's what I love about existentialism. They want to acknowledge the uncomfortable side of life, and they're saying, wait, this is something integral to being human. Let's acknowledge it. So this is sort of this was some kind of introduction to say that philosophy that set the foundations for psychology, that's the same philosophy that was the first to talk about anxiety. But now I want to talk about Kierkegaard specifically and his concept of anxiety. Not concept of anxiety as in the book, because that's the name of the book, but to the idea of anxiety. And he calls anxiety the dizziness of freedom. Now, because Kierkegaard is such a complex thinker, one of the most brilliant minds ever, but extremely difficult to read. Now, I don't want to go into dissecting Kierkegaard's work. I want to jump straight into the point. So I will also be referencing Rollo May, existentialist psychologist, also one of the most underrated thinkers, I believe, is for our time, and for what we are facing as humans. Rollo May, one of the thinkers that we need to come back to. For those who don't know, he was an American existentialist, humanistic psychologist who was really inspired by Kierkegaard and wrote a great book, The Meaning of Anxiety. Okay. Dizziness of freedom. So anxiety is dizziness of freedom. In human being, there is an inbuilt conflict. Human being is the only creature that can project into the future. Yes, we are also the only creature who can look back on the past and contemplate the past, but we are also the only creature who can sit here and project into the future, imagine our future, create our future from what we are imagining. And I'm not talking about manifestation. I'm talking about you sitting down and realizing, I have this path in life to take, I have this path, I have this path. And also quite often realizing I have almost infinite paths to take in life. We are the only creature who can do that, because we are the only creature who can project into the future, because we are the only creature aware of our freedom to take so many different paths and to create so many different versions of future. Because we are aware of that, and because we are aware that we have to choose, because we are the only creature with this capacity, we are also the only creature who can experience anxiety. A cow cannot be anxious. Let me Let me explain further. Kierkegaard has this is, you know, as complex as he is. He has this beautiful to the point explanation. I'm now paraphrasing. This is not a perfect quote, but it's pretty close. He's saying, in perfect reality, there is a possibility, and then you actualize the possibility and bring it into reality in a perfect world. But in the real world, there is always an intermediary between you and possibility, and that's anxiety. Why? Because imagine it like this. You as a human being, once again, you can project it into the future. You are standing and you perceive that in front of you, there are almost infinite doors. Each door is symbolizing a path in life, a decision in life, a possibility. And as a human being, you perceive this. You perceive your freedom to create your life. I'm not saying, you know, you can do anything. I'm not saying that one of these doors for me is to be in the NBA. But with me, as limited as I am, with the constraints of my life, still I see infinite doors. Why does this arouse anxiety? Because I know that any door that I choose and step through to create that version of my future, I am at the same time destroying all of the other doors, at least for a moment. You could say closing, but destroying sounds more scary. So I'm using that on purpose. Because Rollo May says, as much as self-creation, becoming who you are is a process of, is a creative process, it is also a destructive process. So you are always destroying something from your current world, from your current self, and you're destroying other possible versions of yourself as you go through life. This is why Kierkegaard called anxiety dizziness of freedom, because the freedom that you have and what the freedom that you have to choose isn't just sunshine and rainbows. The freedom that you have to choose your life also requires you to make the choice. And as we said, every time you make a choice about a path, about the direction that you're taking, you are closing those other doors, at least for a moment. So you're consistently asked to choose as you go through life. Dizziness of freedom. Kierkegaard also said, the more creative the person is, the more anxiety they experience. What does that mean? Not creative in the sense of how well you can paint, or if you can write a song. How creative a person is existentially, how well you can perceive, or how aware you are of the freedom, your inherent human freedom. So creativity in this sense is relating to your ability to perceive how free you are to create your life. So Kierkegaard says, the more creative a person is, the more likely they are to experience anxiety, the more they experience anxiety. And yes, of course, this also translates to creativity in artistic sense. That's why we do see artistic, creative people be more susceptible to what we call mental health issues. But it doesn't have to be that when we say the more creative you are, the more prone to anxiety you are, it doesn't have to be related to artistic pursuits. Okay, I know there are, excuse me, I know there are messages here, so I will pay attention to all of them. I see Oscar here saying, needed this as I'm planning my next educational step. I would first acknowledge that it's natural to experience anxiety whenever we are faced with a decision. Whenever, and sometimes you need to be more, for example, we have Oscar now planning next educational step. So when this anxiety is a bit more intense than usual, it's worth to sit down and remember and remind yourself and say, this is how it's supposed to be. I am now at this moment aware that I am engaging at the same time in a creative process, but in a destructive process. It is essence of me being human. It is the human condition, human predicament, that I, as a conscious human being, am experiencing this anxiety because I'm aware on some level that this is both a creative and destructive process. As I'm making this new step in life, as I'm making this new step in life, on some level, I'm aware that I'm destroying a part of my old world, of my old self. As I'm making this new step in life, I'm aware on some level that I'm destroying other options that I will not choose for the sake of actualizing the option that I'm choosing. So I would again, when it's a bit more intense and uncomfortable, I would take the time to remind myself that this is how it's supposed to be. This is inherent in the human condition. And again, this is an existentialist idea that has changed my life. That's why I'm wanting to share it with. That's why I wanted to share it with all of you. And the answer is quite simple. I mean, I know it's not the most satisfactory answer, but what to do with this existential anxiety. And I also want to point out that Rollo May, in his book The Meaning of Anxiety, he starts calling this normal anxiety. So Kierkegaard's anxiety, existential anxiety, this angst about the possibilities of life, Rollo May calls normal anxiety. I'm calling it existential because I want to, for people who are new to the idea, I want to make a point that it's an existential idea of anxiety. What to do about it? Well, to move forward despite anxiety. Here is also Kierkegaard helpful to us because he points out that if we don't move through anxiety, we are retreating from life actively. We are, whether we are aware of it or not, retreating into this shut-in position, not actualizing our freedom, our human freedom to create ourselves in our lives, to become a true, authentic individual. So we are not actualizing, utilizing our freedom, and we are falling. We are not stagnating. We are falling quite possibly into despair. Here is now an interesting correlation. James Hollis, Jungian analyst, he says, in life you choose between anxiety and depression. This is tricky because person can be, how modern psychology and maybe someone's experience here, depression and anxiety can coexist. But let's, for a moment, these original philosophical ideas of anxiety and depression. James Hollis say you choose between depression and anxiety. This kind of aligns with Kierkegaard, because Kierkegaard basically says that if you don't move through anxiety, if you don't acknowledge it as a dizziness of freedom and move through it to actualize the possibility that you've chosen, then you fall back into this shut-in position, this again, possibility of falling into despair. Rollo May agrees with this, and this is opening a whole new topic. So I'm going to cut myself off when it comes to dynamic between depression and anxiety. But I will say this: there are some really good news here. Good news, depending on what you do. Let's say you have refused to move forward despite anxiety. What happens? As Kierkegaard says, and Roland May also explains, then from normal anxiety, anxiety of freedom, dizziness of freedom, from normal anxiety, you fall back to neurosis. So it can be pathological anxiety, so unhealthy anxiety about things that you shouldn't be anxious about. So we could say that a person who is experiencing anxiety related to things that one shouldn't, quote unquote, be anxious about, we could say that's the pathological anxiety. That's the not the existential anxiety. So I'm hoping you can see the dynamic that existential anxiety is dizziness of freedom. It's normal, but you have to go through it. Then, if you refuse to go through it as a necessary step towards actualizing one of your possibilities in life, then you fall back into neurosis. This neurosis can be pathological anxiety or depression or obsessive disorders. But then we are at the point of what I wrote about yesterday, what I shared. Then we are at a point, okay, you are experiencing some kind of neurosis or what we call mental health problems today, but this is not a sign of you being messed up or screwed up or broken. This is a sign that something in your way of life or your attitude towards life needs to change. So you once again have the ability to move forward. So it's kind of a loop. So you're either going to continue to refuse to make decisions, continue to move forward despite anxiety, continue to refuse to engage in challenges and adventures of life, and then constantly wonder what's wrong with me, why am I experiencing all of these quote unquote mental health issues. Or you just need one decision to break the loop. You just need one decision to say nothing is wrong with me, I'm not broken, I'm not messed up. There is something that I need to change, something in my way of living, in my attitude towards life, in a challenge that I'm refusing. Something is wrong there. I, as a human being, I'm not broken, and this is where the momentum shifts. Easier said than done. I know moving through despite anxiety is difficult. Easier said than done, but it can be done, and that's sort of not the most complete and comprehensive view of existential anxiety. But to summarize, it's a dizziness of freedom. It's a dizziness of freedom because you as a human being are free with the limitations that you have. All of us but within these limitations that you have imposed on you by life, by your fate as FATE, not fate as FAITH. Within the limitations imposed on you by life, by fate, you have countless possibilities, and it's natural to be anxious about your freedom to create yourself, because as you are creating yourself and your life, you're continuously also engaging in a destructive process. So existential anxiety is inherent to being human. It's necessary. It's a necessary intermediary between you and your possibilities. And the more creative you are, the more able you are to perceive your freedom and your creative possibility as a human, the more likely you are to experience anxiety. So as you move through life, as you face uncertainty, as you experience anxiety in the face of life changes and decisions, take that as a sign that you are a creative human being who is aware of his or her creative capacity, not as a sign that something is wrong with you. That's what I have for you, friends. Before I address No, I want to say before I address questions, I will say something more. But no, I think this is enough. Uh, I want to see what you're writing. Okay, a lot of you. I see Oscar retracting some messages. I don't know if I needed to read some questions. Uriel saying attention is more exploited than ever before. Today, it's really hard to engage in a life-changing campaign. True. Oh, Oscar has something interesting here. Anxiety is a byproduct of eating the fruit in the Garden of Eden. If I'm understanding correctly, you are referring to, eating the fruit, eating the apple is a moment of human human being becoming conscious. That's a great point. That's a great point. Because we are conscious, because we are aware, is why we can experience anxiety. So that's a great point. John saying I have to make a big decision very soon, so I really appreciate this. I'm again. I mean, first of all, thank you for listening and thank you for appreciating it. I I don't know how helpful it is, but as you're experiencing anxiety in the face of the decision, remember that it's basically the sign that you are on the right path, that you are aware of the creative possibility in the decision that you are making. Oh, Nathan has an interesting question. Is it bad to be highly creative and also highly orderly? I don't know why it would be. I think human beings are complex, and I think human beings are extremely interesting. We tend to forget that. So, how interesting to see someone highly creative and also highly orderly. I'm sure there are conflicts built into that dynamic, but I'm also sure that can be a superpower to have a combination of those two. Oh, Uriel, also great point. It's hard to overcome the fear even of positive change, choosing the other doors, closing the other doors, and growing up with absolutely zero guarantees. Sorry about this, friend. This is the price you pay for not having stability in terms of place of living. Sorry about this. Okay, let's see. To be honest, I lost my train of thought, so I want to see the messages. Yeah, overcoming the fear of positive change. By Uriel said, what is the alternative? How does a life of refusing any type of change look like? How does it look like internally? Not even now speaking of accomplishments or lack of accomplishments if you refuse to engage in change. For a moment, we need to start making these cost benefit analysis and look at our life purely in economic terms. What does your life look like internally if you refuse to engage in any type of change? This is not calling out uh, anyone. This is a brotherly question. Manoj, is Manoj correct? Any tips for 31 years old who wasted time and potential? I'm smiling not because I think there's anything funny about what you said, but 31 years old wasted time and potential. How can you say that? We can. I understand the feeling that time has been wasted, and that can be a useful feeling. That can be a useful feeling, but are you perceiving it that way? Are you perceiving it like this is a warning for me to snap out of it, or are you perceiving like, you know this time has been lost, and this is it. I have failed. It's not like you've come to the end of your life. You say, I procrastinate a lot of time dependent on motivational videos. I don't find drive in me. As Oscar said, getting started with one step in the right direction. I don't know, it's difficult to, give general advice without knowing someone's, without knowing the details of one's life. And I don't want to ask now, Manoj, don't want to be intrusive with questions. But once again, it's difficult to give just general advice. But you have to start somewhere. You're saying, dependent on motivational videos, I don't find drive in me. Why don't you sit down and do some writing and try your best to imagine a future that excites you more than motivational videos? Because I know it's not always easy, and it's not always even possible to do so. I know people. I have been that person myself at some point where you cannot imagine a positive future. You cannot project too far into the future. You cannot get excited about the future. I am aware that people can be in situations where that's the case, where you cannot, where the current circumstances of your life are genuinely overwhelming or heartbreaking to the point where you cannot get excited about the future. But if that's not the case, if you're not going through a tragedy of some sort, then you owe it to yourself to sit down and try to get excited about the future, write about it, what your future could look like. If you cannot, and if that's too much, and even if you do, still, if you cannot, then the first step would be what I'm about to say. But also, if you can imagine the future, still, the next step would be, then zooming in, and from getting excited about the future and what it could look like in a year or 2 or 5, then getting excited about the day. For me, it's practice. This practice has been really helpful. It's nothing revolutionary, but for me, just it takes so little time and effort, so impactful, to recognize a win in each day. And it sounds so basic, but you know why it's an important practice? Because it teaches you to learn to recognize what real wins in life are. Because if for long enough you lay down to sleep, and before you go to sleep, you make an effort to, so I'm not even asking you to journal. If before you fall asleep, you make an effort to identify one win in the day, you will pretty quickly realize that most wins in life, because it consists of accumulating small wins, most small wins are, somewhat ordinary moments or moments of effort. I can tell you, an interesting win that relatively often happens to me. I mean, interesting for the sake of example. Not. I'm not expecting anyone here to be excited about it. Sometimes I go to sleep and try to identify a win that I've had that day, and the win is I was writing and I really wanted to quit. I really wanted to quit because I felt unsure about what I'm writing, about its quality. I felt unsure about, what am I even doing, attempting to write for other people who is going to care about what I have to say. And I continued writing. So it's not even, my win isn't I wrote a great essay. My win isn't I received a lot of feedback, or it went viral, or it was read by this many people. My win is I didn't stop writing at a point where an inner voice was telling me to stop, put this aside and go do something else. Man, it's not the most glamorous win, but sometimes that makes a difference between you loving the day that you've had and feeling disappointed about your life. So once again, learning to recognize these wins isn't so much about some magical effect of recognizing. It's about training yourself to notice what wins actually are in life. And then also the second part of this is, when you recognize your win, choose something to be excited about next day. Choose what you're going to be excited about. What can you be excited about the next day? And this can someone can say you cannot create excitement out of nothing. This is fake. Yeah, I'm not talking about choose to be excited about something. I'm not talking about excitement where your whole body feels on fire from excitement. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about a bit more moderate type of excitement. I'm talking about choosing something and saying, okay, this is something that I'm looking forward to tomorrow. And once again, why is this good? Because it teaches you to it trains your mind to notice what are the things to be excited about. It's the action, never the outcome. I cannot how can I lay down and say I'm choosing to be excited, or I'm excited about tomorrow, I'm hoping 100 people will join the live stream. No, last night when I went to sleep, I chose to be excited that I get to do the live stream. So it's the action, my output. If it's output, I believe it's output, not input. So my output. So you're getting excited about what you're going to do, not what the outcome is going to be. And again, if you do that every night, you're training yourself to be excited about the things that you do, regardless of the outcome. And again, I'm acknowledging this is not going to produce insane amount of excitement that we feel when, I don't know, we go on a date with someone that we really like, or whatever brings excitement to people. But it's a more moderate but extremely important type of excitement. And yeah, I don't know, this became a bit longer rant than I expected, but that's something that I would recommend. It came to my mind when you said that depending on motivational videos, you have to take ownership, you have to take the responsibility to create excitement. I'm not saying to you or anyone else stop watching motivational videos, but I think we all know that the point of diminishing returns is reached pretty quickly with motivational videos. John's saying that he turning 30 next month and feeling the waste time. All of us feel that. I'm turning 30 this. I'm also riddled with some doubts and then feelings of not having accomplished enough. But I think it's a lot of it is natural. Okay. So many messages. Excuse me, friends. I don't want to be inappropriate, but I'm a bit cold. I caught a cold, so I have to just take care of my nose. Sorry. Okay. I'm going to start going through questions a bit more quickly. Nathan, can we really make a major change to our neuroticism and extroversion score, or should we choose career more in line with our temperament? Nathan, if you're still here, I don't feel comfortable making claims. Can we make these changes? I've read something recently. Who is a good person Scott Barry Kaufman. Scott Barry Kaufman is a modern day psychologist. He is trying to continue the legacy of Abraham Maslow, and he's doing so, I would say, in a respectable manner. He has written papers. Those are scientific papers, not not the most enjoyable reads, but he has some papers on the big five personality traits, and I mean, he's not the only one. There are a lot of people, but I'm trying to remember. There is one. There is one very interesting, nuanced well-being. I don't know how many of you are aware that from these big five personality traits, what is it? Neuroticism, extroversion, openness, agreeability, agreeableness, agreeableness, or agreeableness probably, and another one I cannot remember. So each one of them, each one of them then has 3, 4, 5 traits that make neuroticism, that make agreeableness, or rather they spring out of them. I'm not sure what's the direction, but it's not as if, like, oh, this is neuroticism, and oh, this is other traits are connected to them. So it's way more nuanced than we think. Way more nuanced. I'm going to. I think it would be interesting for you to read that, Nathan. Then, Nathan, this is not a shameless plug. I would advise you to go to my and in the title again, a connection unstable. This is ridiculous. Am I back? I think I'm back. Sorry, friends. Sorry for buffering. It's yeah. Okay. I wanted to say, Nathan, I would advise you to go on my Substack if you don't know Existential Express, so you can find it probably linked on YouTube or linked on Instagram. And scroll a little bit down and find post that says nuanced well-being in the title. I believe there is nuanced well-being because that's a post where I'm sharing what I've been reading, and I'm giving a link to this paper. Again, not the most enjoyable read, but maybe you can also find a podcast done by Scott Barry Kaufman. Is it Scott Barry Kaufman? I believe it is. Yes.